So today we're going to talk about 3 weird things we grew up seeing married couples do. Everyone knows that love is important in marriage. Everyone can agree about that. But I think people seem to forget that respect is so important in marriage. It's so normalized that I literally just did it by accident in a video calling this out.
I've talked to friends who have been under the weight of like having to keep parents' secrets for so long. And I'm like, oh man, that is so damaging for them, their view of marriage.
I'm interested to talk about this.
We say weird because we want to note that the things that we saw weren't normal.
Yeah.
And I think that the sentiment that we often see in our generation, and when I say our generation, we're kind of on the cusp of like Gen Z and millennials. So I'm including both generations when I say our generation. So millennial, Gen Z, I notice that a lot of people in this generation are marriage hesitant. They experience marriage hesitancy.
Yes.
How would you say that?
Yeah, I like the second way you said it. They experience
marriage hesitancy.
Hesitancy.
The bottom line is that when it comes to marriage, they are a bit more reluctant. They would delay it further than generations past. They would maybe say, oh, what's the point of getting married? Some people don't want to get married completely. It's like at worst, people don't want to get married. At best, they're like, oh, I want to delay this as long as possible. And I think a lot of the reason why that sentiment is so popular in our generation is that people just saw unhealthy versions of marriage.
Yeah.
And don't often know that they could actually be a part of building and crafting a healthy, fun, vibrant marriage with their significant other.
Yeah, and I think there's like 2 versions of unhealthy marriages people see. Like the marriages that end in divorce, which of course is sad and unhealthy. They probably ended because it was an unhealthy relationship. But then also there's the marriages that are still together but have all these like unhealthy normalized rhythms that people are like, wait, why do you guys do that? And so we want to kind of highlight those things that we've seen before and we've noticed and we try to actively not do so that we can have a healthy marriage and last a lifetime.
Yeah, I like when you delineated almost like the difference between like, oh yeah, there's unhealthy divorce, but also unhealthy together. Because I think sometimes people say like, oh, my parents have a broken marriage and they got a divorce or they're getting a divorce. But people don't often see when parents are like going to like, I don't know, it's like 20th anniversary or 25th anniversary or 30th anniversary. They assume that longevity means health. Yeah. But oftentimes when you're like in the midst of an unhealthy relationship, just because you've hung on for 35 years doesn't mean it's healthy. So I like that you highlighted that. Yeah. One of the first things that we saw was putting down your spouse in the name of humor. So whether it be socially or like just when it's just the two of you and one person onlooking, whether it be a kid or a friend or whatever, it's like taking cuts at your spouse in the name of humor.
Yeah, and I think like everyone knows that love is important in marriage. Everyone can agree about that. But I think people seem to forget that respect is so important in marriage. And respect, I feel like, is almost one of those things that's under the umbrella of loving someone, right? Yeah. And so if you're disrespecting someone through your humor to them just one-on-one, which is bad, but I feel like in front of people is even worse, that's going to chip away at your relationship, chip away at your love for each other. And over time, it's really detrimental.
Yeah. And I think that whole saying that goes like, behind every joke is a truth or a version of that. Is so true in the sense that like the joke sometimes like at face value has truth under it. So maybe it's like, oh, it's like when Mariah forgets to so-and-so, I don't know, when Mariah forgets to change the load of laundry. And then that's like the punchline. At face value.
By the way.
I was reaching for a good joke.
I just did it to you.
Oh yeah.
That's crazy.
Wild. This is live time. This is a
lifetime example that's real. I wasn't even trying. That's embarrassing. But I just made fun of Daniel in front of all of you.
And I'm hurt by that.
I'm so sorry.
Thanks.
Actually, something I wanted to say is Daniel actually has really thick skin and he's a very confident person. So I could do jokes like that to him all the time, and it would probably roll off his back, and he'd be fine. But just because he's fine with it doesn't mean that's okay that I do it.
Yeah, it's true.
I feel like a lot of people fall into it, like, oh, they're fine, they can take it, but it's like, will they be fine 40 years from now when you've made those jokes every day?
Up, yeah, because it erodes at someone's like confidence or even how they think you esteem them. But what I was saying is like, there's almost like two ways at looking at the whole saying of like, oh, behind every joke is a truth.
Yeah.
It's like, at face value, it could be like, oh yeah, Mariah does actually often forget to change the laundry or something laundry oriented. But then under that is like the truth beneath the joke, which is like, I don't actually think highly of you. You know what I mean?
Wow, yeah, it's like I see what you're saying.
You get what I mean? So it's like, if you say something about me that belittles me, it's like the thing that belittles me might be true at face value, but what's even more true is how little you see me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or how little you think of me.
Yeah, if you're like, oh, like she always does this, it's like, it's not just about the chore. It's like, you think I'm lazy.
Exactly. And I feel like that is the thing that offends the person more than the actual thing. It's like, it's not about the chore.
Because you know each other so well,
it's a subtext.
so you know what's under the subtext.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's one of those things where it's like, guys, we have to stop cutting at our spouses, our significant other, in the name of humor, because it doesn't just make them feel less, like think less of themselves and less of your relationship, but the onlookers also think less of your spouse, because it's like, oh, it's okay to make fun of this person, or it's okay to poke fun at them.
Yeah.
Okay, let's all do that.
Yeah.
And before you know it, there's like a culture of making fun of your spouse that you started without even meaning it.
It's
you know
so normalized that I literally just did it by accident in a video calling this out.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
And it's, we need to highlight it.
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't be normal. It should be normal to uplift and encourage your spouse. And if you want to say something unkind to them, or you have a problem with something they do, then figure out how to say that to them one-on-one. Yeah. In a way that's constructive, not in a way that's like passively through a joke or in front of other people.
Yeah. And if you have a good sense of humor, and humor is something you value as a couple, like exercise that in different ways. Like Mariah and I, for better or for worse, like make fun of other things. Like we don't really make fun of people because it's not kind.
We make fun of our sons.
Sometimes we make fun of people. But we're trying to get better. But mainly it's like more situations and like things.
Yeah.
I feel like
experiences that happen to us.
Similar to how in conflict resolution, it needs to be us two partnering up against the conflict. When it comes to humor, the same thing applies. It should be us two like making fun of things together as a way to bring almost like excitement and shared bonding to our relationship. Yeah.
I just want to be clear. I said we make fun of our son sometimes. For those of you who don't know, he's like 2 months old. So he doesn't know, we're not bullying him.
Like an example
he doesn't know what's going on.
When he wakes up, he like stretches and is like in a different world for about 10 minutes. So and he just goes like...
or he's like this.
Yeah.
These big
Anyways. But yeah, if humor is your thing, find a different object of your humor or a different butt of your jokes other than your spouse.
It's a lazy joke.
Yeah, it is a lazy joke.
It's a lazy joke, really.
Anyways.
Okay.
The next thing, this is common. I feel like I didn't experience this much in my household, but it is a common thing that I've seen people do in marriages, which is telling your kids, and this is for couples, married couples that have kids, telling your kids to keep secrets from the other parent or your spouse.
Yeah, I think that's just like, it's communicating so many things. It's communicating to your kids that you and your spouse don't know things about each other.
Yeah, and then it communicates to your kid that it's okay to keep secrets from their parent.
Yeah, or from their parent. Yeah, which that's not okay. You should be like a family unit, and the core of that unit are the parents. Yeah. So if you're keeping things from each other, it just doesn't work.
And then this is kind of tied into your first point, but it's like, I think that transparency is so key to the health of a marriage. And it's almost like the opposite of transparency in this context is like compartmentalization. And it's almost like allowing yourself and allowing your kid to almost like learn this like unhealthy compartmentalization that erodes at the transparency that you should be striving for in a married couple. So it's like, oh, this is a thing in this container that your dad's not supposed to know, or this is a thing in this container that your mom's not supposed to know. And it's almost like creating a culture in your marriage, but also in your household, a place that's supposed to be safe, that secrets are okay.
Yeah, totally. And this could be really big secrets that parents keep from each other. But this all could also be just little things. Little things like, I don't know, buying something extra that your spouse, you're afraid to tell your spouse about. And it might start small, but it could get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's why it's like good to just be aware of it in general.
I've talked to friends who have been under the weight of like having to keep parents' secrets for so long. And I'm like, oh man, that is so damaging for them, their view of marriage. And I feel like we kind of started off talking about, this leads to the marriage hesitancy that people are feeling, whereas it's like, oh, I don't want to enter into this thing that almost like at face value, it looks like, oh, there's transparency, there's health, there's mutual love, but beneath the surface, there's secrets and almost like
things in hiding. It's so sad, actually.
Yeah.
The weight of that on a child. Yeah.
And I talk to people in their like 20s, 30s.
They're still holding it.
Who are either still holding it or are still feeling like the weight or the pain of what it felt like to hold that for so long.
Parents have to realize like the power dynamic between them and their child, you know, like how much that could damage someone. Wow, that's sad. Yeah, so that's a big thing. Stop telling your kid to keep secrets from your spouse.
What's the last one?
The last one we saw is not having your spouse be your main person.
Yeah.
So, yes, have best friends, go on girls' trips, go on guys' trips. That's all very healthy.
It's very healthy to have other friends in relationships,
But at the end of the day, like, your spouse is your main person. And that's how you create, like, a healthy family unit. And I think that's where the marriage hesitancy comes up, is because people have grown up seeing maybe their parents or their friends' parents or whatever just being like roommates. Like, there's no friendship, there's no relationship. They don't want to hang out with each other, but they just coexist together.
Yeah. Sometimes people will ask, why do people go elsewhere for a main person? Or why do marriages get to the point where their spouse ceases to be, whether it be their husband or their wife, ceases to be their main person? We recently chatted about this, and we kind of broke it up into like, this is super simplified, but it's almost like marriages need shallow bucket moments, medium bucket moments, and then deep bucket moments. And this would be like a gradient describing like the depth of relationship and topics covered, things you're walking through, stuff like that. So shallow bucket moments would be like what?
Going for a movie, going for dinner, like maybe your weekly date night.
Having fun. Maybe you guys play video games together. Maybe you, play card games, or you have a specific, board game or something like that you play. It's a shallow bucket moment. Yeah. And a medium bucket is like the bulk of the experiences in a relationship. It's like just
doing your dishes,
routines,
waking up every morning together,
dropping each other off at work,
taking care of your kids, whatever that is,
having like regular conversations about family and interests and politics, all these different things,
just day-to-day life.
And then deep bucket moments deal with like grief and intimacy and supporting each other emotionally. And I find that oftentimes people look elsewhere for like outside of their spouse in those shallow bucket moments, or those shallow kind of realm items, or those deep realm items. And it's like, my spouse can live with me in the medium, but there's something that I'm missing in the depth. Like, oh, I'm going through this significant thing, and they haven't grown a level of like almost like emotional awareness or an ability to support me emotionally in the ways that I most need. Or it's like, oh man, I just want to chill.
Yeah.
And I don't have fun with my spouse anymore because we're always in the deep or in the medium.
Yeah.
And so
or you've like grown apart in your interests.
Yeah.
And to the point where you don't even want to find common ground anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, I'm doing girls' night and I'm more excited about girls' night than date night. Or I'm doing a boys' trip and I'm more excited for boys' trip than a vacation with my significant other.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a specific moment last year, actually, where you were going through something pretty significant. And I remember you basically saying like, hey, Dan, I need more support. I need more. It's almost like what I'm needing emotionally in this moment is more coming alongside me, more telling me it's going to be okay, more just being present with me when I'm crying. And I remember that was challenging for me because I grew up in a context where emotions weren't really almost like a key priority in terms of like how we related with each other. I have two brothers, a sister, two immigrant parents, and we weren't necessarily like sitting around talking about our feelings. So I didn't really have a container for what it looked like to like sit with someone in emotion.
Yeah.
But I realized in that moment that it was like kind of like a turning point where I'm like, oh, I don't get to just not be that way.
Yeah.
I have to learn how to best support you in that moment.
Yeah, and at that time, I remember thinking to myself, like, oh, should I bring this up to him? Like, maybe in life, like, I just go to my best friends with stuff like this.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I just cry with them, and maybe I just, like, share my heart with them because my best friends, I've been best friends with them for, like, 15 years. They know, like, how to relate with me when stuff like that comes up.
Yeah.
But then I caught myself, and I was like, wait a second. No one should come before my spouse in moments like that.
Yeah.
Of course, your best friends, like, share that with them too. But it shouldn't be like, I only share it with them and I don't share it with you.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. And then the other side is like the shallow moments where it's like, I'm a high proponent that like couples should always prioritize and put themselves in situations where they're able to laugh together. So maybe it's like you both just have a good sense of humor and you find yourself laughing together a lot. Maybe you guys like a shared comedian and you want to do that. Or maybe it's someone on TikTok or Instagram that you both really find funny. But I think that expands out to like recreation and fun.
Yeah.
Like I think that oftentimes when people start dating, they bond over shared interests. But sometimes over time in marriage, sometimes your interests change or you grow out of those interests and one stays interested. You know what I mean? Like one spouse stays interested, one doesn't.
Yeah.
But I think that as you mature as a couple, you should allow your interests and the things that you find recreationally to evolve and grow as well.
Yeah. And like, I feel like with everything in this video that we grew up seeing, because you grew up seeing it, you can sometimes just naturally fall into it.
Yeah.
But it's worth it to fight against it. And it's worth, like, even the shared interest thing, it's like, oh, for so many years, me and my spouse have had no shared interests. It's going to be so hard to find something we both like doing. It's like, well, it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's totally worth it.
Yeah.
Put in the work. Like, I feel like people put in the work for other things way more than they put it in for their marriage. And it's like, man, I feel like that's so backwards.
I remember talking to this business leader once who is in a healthy marriage and is really successful in their industry. And he said, Daniel, my biggest advice when it comes to marriage is put as much work, effort, and creativity into your marriage as you do your business or your work or whatever it is that's like occupying most of your like vocational or occupational time. Yeah. And I remember I was like, oh, so what does that look like for you? So he's like, I think creatively about how my wife and I are going to spend our weekends, or I think creatively about the trips we're going to do in the next 12 to 18 months, or I think strategically about how to improve our relationship. And I was like, oh, that's so good. If your spouse is the one who's going to be beside you in the thick and in the thin, if they're going to be the one who's going to be around you post-retirement, why would you put more effort into something you're going to retire from than who you're going to retire with?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's so good.
So I think it's so important for us to like almost like see your marriage as the main thing you're working on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. You're not just going to float into 60 years married.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to even.
Or you will, and then it'll be
Yeah,
rough.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like, you don't even want to float into
Yeah.
60 years marriage because you won't know that person. You won't have a deep love for that person, and you won't, like, want to be with them.
Yeah.
So how do you create a marriage that you don't want to be hesitant about?
Yeah. Both of us had the amazing opportunity to be able to learn from the best and the worst of couples that we were able to witness growing up. Some from our parents, some from other examples around us. And I would love to hear more things that you saw that were maybe strange or weird, things that we've normalized that shouldn't be normalized. And let's keep the conversation going.
And if you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe. We love to have you here with us in our community, and we'd love to hear from you. If you have any topics you want to hear us cover, make sure to comment that below. But with that, we will see you next week.